I was a savvy entrepreneur. I knew a lot. And my business coach and I were talking over lunch one day, and I said something to the effect of, man, if I had to start all over, would I actually start this company?
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or investment advice. Please consult a professional advisor before making decisions based on what you hear on this show.
Welcome to that Wall Street Tribe. Get ready to exit without exiting with the real Jason Duncan. Jason, so glad to have you on your show.
Glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, we're going to have to break down exactly what that is in a second. But I guess the question I want to ask you from the beginning is, what was that personal moment that made you say, hey, I need to step away from my business, get out of this business, but yet I don't want to sell it?
It was 2018. I was working with my business coach at the time, and we had come out. 2018 was our best year we'd ever had. We had a 7-figure EBITDA that year. Things were going really, really well. And I didn't particularly enjoy the industry that I was in. I had built this company primarily out of just opportunity. It was an opportunity, and I built this company, and we were doing really well. But I thought, I probably would do something different if I had it to do all over again. And my business coach looked at me and said, well, you can't sell. And I said, what do you mean you can't sell? I've got this business that's doing over $1 million in bottom line profit. What do you mean I can't sell? He goes, the same reason you want to sell is the reason no one would want to buy. And I didn't know what he meant at first, but he said, look, you are the center of the business. Like you can't, everything goes through you. You don't do everything. You have good team members, but everything still kind of stops at your desk. Everything has to go through you, and you want to sell because you don't want to do that anymore. Well, nobody's going to want to buy a job. And so you can't. And so it took that moment of clarity for me to figure out, okay, well, I've got to do something different. And then the following year, I went through a dispute with my business partner that ultimately led for him being kicked out of the business, which was terrible and negative. But that whole year, I ended up spending most of my time trying to fend off lawsuits and potential bankruptcies, a lot of bad things. And at the end of the year, something happened that had never happened before. We lost money for the first time ever. So we went with $1 million EBITDA to losing money, and that fast. And my coach reminded me of what he said. He said, see, when you're not paying attention, the business suffers. And that just solidified it for me. He's like, I can't be the linchpin and the glue that holds everything together. I have to figure out how to build a business that doesn't require me. And that's how Exit Without Exiting was born.
How many summers do you have left with your kids? 10, maybe less?
And are you spending them together, or are you still stuck in the office while time slips by?
You want freedom. That's not the problem. The problem is you don't have a system that buys back your time. Without it, 3 years from now, your kids will be older, and they won't care that your business was more successful. They'll remember you weren't there.
That's why we built the Passive Income Operating System, the plan we use to create over $50,000 a month in passive income. The system isn't free, but the training that shows you how it works is, and it's under an hour.
Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/PIOS. Take the first step to buying back your time now.
So Jason, I'm going to, first of all, thank you for sharing that, the background of it. Were there any other small signs along the way that led to that, that mindset that you had, like, hey, I want to get rid of this business? Like, obviously losing money was like the wake up call, but I mean, was there small things along the way that you can point to?
Well, I think it's just a matter of how and why you started your business. So many entrepreneurs, I don't know what the percent is, but let's just say it's half. Half the entrepreneurs start business out of pure opportunity, and they like, let's just do this. This sounds a good idea. The others start because they have a grand idea, a grand vision. They want to do something special. I was in the first part. Well, for me, because of that, I was in the lighting business and the electrical contracting business, and I didn't really care anything about that industry. I did it because it was a great opportunity, and we capitalized on the opportunity. We rode that wave for a decade and made millions of dollars as a result of riding that wave. But now, a decade into the business, I was a savvy entrepreneur. I knew a lot. I don't know everything, but I knew a lot. And my business coach and I were talking over lunch one day, and I said something to the effect of, man, if I had to start all over, would I actually start this company again? And no, the answer is absolutely not. I would have started a motorcycle dealership or a car lot or something, like things that I enjoy, things that go fast. I like that better than lights and electricians. So that was kind of the I guess the impetus for me to say, what would it look like if I exited?
Well, first of all, I mean, light is pretty quick, right? I mean, the speed of light, the way the speed at which a dad can go around and turn lights off in the house after they've all been turned on, it's pretty quick. But I get what you're saying. I do want to kind of like address the fact that most business owners say, I don't really understand how to step away without selling because the business typically revolves around me. Why do you think that's such a common belief that they don't think that they can get out if they are still in? It's I feel like that's a line from, The Godfather, maybe.
Well, the truth of the matter is that I think it's 83% of businesses that list for sale never sell. And the number one reason why that is because the people who are looking to acquire businesses don't want to buy a job. They want to buy an asset. And the businesses that they're looking at are not assets. They're a job that they would have to step into, or at worst they would have to, or at best they would have to do an earn out with the founder and make him or her stay 3, 5, maybe 6, 7 years to run things, but they now are the new owner. Nobody wants to buy a job. So the reason that people need to think about this idea of exit without exiting is a couple of reasons. Number one, is it going to make your business run better and be worth more money if you're not the guy or the girl, as it were, in charge of everything and doing everything? Your business will be worth 30 to 50% more when it's not owner dependent. And that is not something I made up to satisfy my marketing. It is actual truth. I've got studies when I do trainings and coaching. I cite all this. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but 30 to 50% reduction in value when the owner is the dependent one in the business, or in the business is dependent upon the owner. So it is common to see this happen.
Yeah, what you're saying is that people don't buy businesses. They buy the processes that run the business. And so frequently, small business owners are the business. They are the goodwill. They are the CEO, the COO, sometimes the HR department, right? Like they're all things. And to your point, the only way I could acquire your business, if that was the situation, is either keep you in it, and then now I've got to try to turn an entrepreneur into an employee. And there's a good reason most entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs and not employees. They don't they don't follow rules very well. They don't have, high levels of, follow through on specific orders. They don't like to color within the lines. All of those things is an issue. So I've also heard you talk a little bit about that people either do one of two things. Either they sell too early or they grind too long. So what's that middle block that keeps them stuck in both cases?
Well, I think the grinding too long is much more the reality of what most entrepreneurs, because hustle and grind has been popularized with Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. It's this hustle and grind mentality, when really hustle and grind is a phase. It's a business phase. It's what we do when we start. We have to hustle. We have to grind. We are the number one person. We do know it better than everybody else. We are better at it than everybody else. And that is a phase. But a lot of entrepreneurs end up latching onto it, and it becomes a tagline. It becomes what you put on a t-shirt. You go get a tattoo. You put it on your license plate. Hustle and grind, hustle and grind. Well, listen, there are no billionaire hustle and grinders. Like, we wouldn't know Elon Musk's name if he stayed a hustle and grinder. But he had to figure out, now he's a phenom and he does work a lot of hours, and there's nobody going to deny that, but he's not grinding the same way the guy runs a t-shirt shop is grinding. There's a complete difference here. We can't hustle and grind our way to success. We can get close to it and we can experience it for a short period of time, but long-term, it will always crumble.
A super good insight. Like, I think recognizing that it takes it to get to a certain level where that's no longer required is super important. Now, we've talked about this term exit without exiting several times already. How can we define that for somebody that says, it sounds interesting, but I don't even know what that is?
So when I exited my company in 2020, 2021, and I was now filling up my time with other things rather than going to the office every day, people asked me the natural question, hey, Jason, did you sell your business? And I said, no, I didn't sell the business. I exited. Well, I thought selling and exiting, I thought that was synonymous. I thought that's what that means. I said, well, actually, I exited without exiting. And that phrase was the only way I could describe what happened. And when I said it to my marketing coach, he was like, that's it. That's the thing we need to talk about. Because that phrase is not common. Nobody talks about that. That's your thing. So that's how exit without exiting became something. But what it means, to answer your question, what it means is that you still own the business. You still are in control of the business. You're still responsible for the business, but you have no requirements daily to operate the business. If you remember, and most entrepreneurs would know the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, great book. And he popularized this phrase, work in the biz, or don't work in the business, work on the business, right? So don't work in it, work on it. And he popularized that phrase. And we all hear that. We talk about that a lot. But I believe that there is one more level that Michael Gerber didn't talk about. And this is what I teach. There's working in it, there's working on it, and then there's working above it. And so I believe that there are three levels to the entrepreneurial evolution. I think there's owner operator. If you look at like a triangle, at the bottom level of the triangle is owner operator. And 90% of entrepreneurs stay here. It's where they do everything. They scoop the ice cream, they make the t-shirts, they do the books. Then in the middle is the working on the business. That's the owner manager. And that's what Michael Gerber talked about in the E-Myth. It's becoming the manager of the systems and the processes and the people. And I'd say 4 to 8% of entrepreneurs make it into this owner manager category. And that's what I was with my lighting company. I was the owner manager. But then there's this other tip top, maybe 2 to 4% of entrepreneurs ever hit it. And that's owner investor. And the owner investor invests in the business. It's an asset for them. And any of us as investors, what do we want? If we buy an apartment complex as an investment, we don't go mow the grass and trim the shrubs. We're not doing it. It's an investment for us. We're not involved in it. We're not even involved on it. It's an investment that we're working above. And I believe that entrepreneurs can exit without exiting and get to that owner investor status.
So I really want to kind of like peel this back a little bit. Maybe just, more examples will help me get my brain around it. And if anybody can get their head around it, then I know our audience can, if I can, right? So like talk a little bit about what the business looked like before, right? You talked about being an owner operator, then moving into that manager level, but now you're above the business, you're investing in the business. How structurally did it change whenever you exited without exiting? And, both, I guess, like what was the day-to-day things that were happening, but also from an emotional perspective, how are you removing yourself? Because I know that that's a big hang up, right? Too oftentimes as we own these businesses, we're emotionally attached to them. And that's how we get pulled back into a lot of things. Talk a little bit about that for you. And then maybe we can start to peel that off for people who are following and reading your book and are in your mastermind and all these things. Just seeing more examples of that, I think makes this clear.
Well, that is a really, really good point, Russ. And that shows a depth of understanding of this. I think that we definitely need to look into. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who are like me, and they don't really care for their business. They don't care for the industry. They don't hate it. There was nothing about it that I hated. And I really liked my employees and I had good people. But I didn't enjoy the industry. And so if I could switch places with somebody else, I would have done so. And then there's a group of entrepreneurs, maybe a lot who are watching or listening to the show, who love their business. They started in industry they want. I've got a good friend of mine who's in the aviation business, and we joke all the time because he makes fun of this exit without exiting thing. And he's very wealthy. He's done very well for himself, but he's like, I love flying. I love the business of airplanes. I love helicopters. I love anything to do with air travel. Like, I love it. I would never not want to do it. Or there's a lot of people like that. But the truth is the same on both sides of the coin. If you are the dependent person in the business, if the business rather is dependent upon you, your business is worth less. So whether you don't like it and want to get out, or you love it and you want it to be your thing until you die, do you want your business to really be dependent upon you because you've lowered its value? And here's something that nobody talks about. It's selfish. It's selfish to make the business dependent upon you. Why? Well, let's take my friend, for example, and I'm not calling him selfish and I don't know his details, but I'll continue this analogy. Let's say, for example, he has 100 employees but everything relies on him. And again, This is an example using him. This is not true about him. But let's say that the business 100% relies on him. Well, 100 people and their husbands or wives and their kids and perhaps grandkids and extended family rely on this one dude not getting hit by a bus or having a plane crash. Let's talk about that. Just to make sure that their mortgage is paid, that their health care is taken care of, the kids go to college, and groceries are on the table. That is totally selfish. So the exit without exiting mentality allows you to build something that doesn't depend upon a single point of failure. And I believe that's what we all need to understand is we can't be the single point of failure for our business.
There was nothing worse than walking into class when you're in school and the teacher saying, "Pop quiz day." Why? Because you were unprepared. Are you unprepared, though, for financial freedom?
Don't be. Find out how close you are by taking our 30-second quiz at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/quiz.
Talk about, it's something else that we hear is, man, once I get my business dialed in, I've got the systems in place, the right people in place, I need to sell it because now it's at peak value and I could take those dollars and invest in something passive. Compare and contrast that based on this exit without exiting idea.
So I'm going to take just a little bit of time to dive into what I teach, the methodology that we teach. And I'll try not to make this, to get too deep into this because I want to go straight to what your question is, Joey. And that is there's 7 stages to the XOS method that I teach. XOS stands for the Exeter Operating System. And we developed these stages based on my firsthand experience of exit without exiting. And then as I started coaching other people, we started realizing, oh, well, if with this happens, then this, then this. And so after years of watching this happen with other entrepreneurs, we developed this system. And I'll go really quickly through these 7 stages because stages 6 and 7 are what you just asked about. Stage 1 is basic delegation. You can't do anything that we're going to talk about until you know how to do that. If you don't delegate, you can't get anywhere else. Stage 2 is assembling your support squad. You got to have people to support the business, the daily ops. Stage 3 is building your A team. And your A team are the people you're going to rely on to run things and make decisions, not just do stuff, but make decisions in your absence. Stage 4 is when you start putting your systems and automation in place. And this is when you double down on what technology, what systems, what automation can we put in place so that I can get to a maximum value exit, or I can at least get to exit without exiting. Stage 5 is it's creating a passive profits machine. And this is what most people miss about businesses. We think about real estate as a passive investment, but I think one of the most overlooked passive investment opportunities is business ownership. Because if you do my plan, exit without exiting, you can have a business that throws off hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit, perhaps millions, and you don't have to do anything. Isn't that what passive income is? And I'm not a tax advisor, but if you do it a certain way, you work less than 750 hours a year actively in the business, that income from the business is also classified as passive income, which will be taxed as such. Now, stages 6 and 7, this is where I wanted to really get to. Stage 6 is exit without exiting. And stage 7 is the final exit. Stage 6 is the option, because once you get there, you've got a passive profits machine throwing off profits to you. You've got systems and automation running that don't require you. You got an A team that makes decisions. You got a support squad that does the daily ops, and you've got a delegation system in place. A lot of people, most of my clients, frankly, they want to stay in stage 6. They like being there. They have options. They get money from the business. They don't need to sell it, and they're doing great financially. But then there are some, depending on stages of life and their level of, happiness with the overall business itself as the industry, they may want to go ahead and put it for sale and move towards an exit. But when you exit, then you got tax implications. There's a lot of things you got to consider. So a lot of people love to stay in stage 6. And I'll give one real life example, and then I'll turn it back over to you. We had a client come to us about a year ago, not quite a year ago. And he owned a kitchen remodeling company. And he said, "Hey, I read your book and love what you're talking about. And I have my business listed for sale right now with a broker. Can you help me get it sold? Because I think you can help me get it sold for more money." And I said, "Yeah, we can do that." I said, "Well, tell me about your timeline." He goes, "Well, I need to do it by next October." And there's some reasons around that I'm not going to get into, but it's really funny. But But I said, well, like, I don't know that we can do everything you've just asked me to do in that short of a time period, but certainly we can give it a shot. On a fast forward to today, he's taken it down from the broker listing. He's decided that he likes stage 6 much better, that he doesn't need to sell it. He doesn't need to walk away with a lump sum. He can actually continue to make money from the business passively while he's going off and living the life that he wants to live.
No, I think there's a lot of value to what you're saying there. And that too oftentimes I think people, and you said, people stay too long, they grind, and they're at a point where they've passed maybe the point of being able to say, I'm willing to stay in phase 6 because they've mentally exited the business. And as we all know, like, we've all had jobs at some point in our life. And when we decided to leave, we were gone. It was over. It's the last 2 weeks of school when we were kids, right? It's like we were out of there. It didn't matter what the teacher was telling us. We were ready to leave. So I want to talk about someone who has this mindset, though, that they do want to exit without exiting. Where are you seeing most people fail? What are some of the biggest mistakes that they make in that area that they need to learn from in this episode?
There is a thing I call the hero syndrome, and the hero syndrome goes back, and it really dovetails nicely into this idea of hustle and grind. But the hero syndrome is when the entrepreneur believes that he or she has to be the hero of and save the business from itself and from every malady. And so they don their cape and they swoop in when there's something on fire and they put the fire out. They swoop in to save the baby. They swoop in to save the damsel in distress, as it were. All the money issues get solved by the hero. All the sales issues get solved by the hero. All the administrative issues get solved by the hero. Well, in the first year or so of a business, I forgive entrepreneurs for having the hero syndrome because it's appropriate. Like, you need to be the hero. You need to make sure your baby is growing. But the problem is, and this gets to exactly what you're asking, Russ, is that they stay too long in the hero syndrome and they never take the cape off. And so they're 3 years in, 5 years in, decade in, and they're still wearing the cape. And every time something breaks, they're looking for the hero to save them. That, again, is a single point of failure. And you can't have a long-term business that's worth anything that has a hero at the helm.
Yeah, for sure. That is the number one thing that would keep these businesses from doing what you're talking about. I have a follow-up question to that says, okay, if I am that hero, and I can't let that part go, or I don't feel like I can because I can't find the proper replacement. You talked about the A team. Sounds really good, but how does it practically look? What are some key things that you walk business owners through to actually build a stable and suitable A team or replacement hero, if you will, so that you can be hands-on?
One of the interesting things that I've discovered in doing this work now for as many years as I've been doing it is that that mindset plays into this way more than tactics or strategy. And the hero syndrome is a mindset, by the way. Hustle and grind is a mindset that's demonstrated through physical actions, but it's a mindset. And so the reason that we have a mindset coach on our team in the Exeter Club, my mastermind, is for this reason, is that we have to have entrepreneurs really think about what they think about. Are you really stuck mentally in some places that is not serving you? And you take an entrepreneur and don't have any coaching, they don't read any books, and they're not innately going to think, hey, I don't need to be the guy scooping the ice cream. I don't need to be the guy doing the books. They're going to think, well, I'm a business owner. That's what I'm supposed to do. But if you back up and you look at the swath of information and the data that we have about successful businesses versus unsuccessful ones, you will see very quickly that the mindset is the biggest difference between the successful ones and the unsuccessful ones. I was reading James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. You guys have probably heard of it. And one of the things he says early in the book, I don't know, it is in the first or second chapter, is that winners and losers have the same goals. The difference is the winners have better processes. And he's right. Like, winners have a different process of reaching the goal than the loser who didn't reach the goal, who had the same goal. I would say there's a little shift in that I could add put in the context of this conversation is that winners in business and losers in business as entrepreneurs both had the same goals. The difference is the winners had better mindsets. They thought about things a lot different. They said, you know what, this idea that I just can't find good help, that's a mindset, because that's not true. There's 380 million people in this country, and you're so arrogant to believe that you can't find somebody as good as you. Oh, give me a break. Like, that's what it really boils down to, is we feel like we're better than everybody else. But there are good people out there. I remember when I hired my first operations person in my business years and years and years ago, he was not very good at his job. I was so much better at running operations than him, but I had to let him fail. I had to let him discover on his own how to do it. Could I have negotiated better purchasing deals from our suppliers than him? Yeah, heck yeah. But move down the road 5, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then go back and analyze that. That dude could run circles around me in operations. Now, what did that do? That allowed him the opportunity to discover and enjoy his own calling as an employee in my business. And it allowed me the opportunity to move on and build the asset, which is my job as the entrepreneur.
All right. Well, no, I think you're right. I heard it once said that we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems.
Yep.
And I think that that's what you're saying. The processes and the systems that run our business is going to make it successful and make it worth more. All right. So let's go to the critic of this that would say, okay, you are not going to sell, right? You build the systems. You're going to stay in phase 6. You're going to stay in the exit without exiting. And how, though, do you guarantees a bad word, right? There's no guarantees except death and taxes, right? How do I guarantee, or whatever the next best word is that I'm lacking right now, that operations manager who is so crucial to the business, who is helping do the thing that you used to do well, but now is doing it in your place, how do you keep them? How do you keep them in that seat? Because to the point is, if that operations manager walks away tomorrow and creates his own lighting business, for instance, right? Takes the contracts that he's developed 10 years of relationships that your business had, but now have stepped away, and he's been the guy, the hero for all of those vendors and customers or whatever. How do you not put yourself at risk? How do you keep that person?
That's a great question and a good insight. There's many layers to this, and I'll hit a couple of them. First of all, the point about not having a single point of failure in the business doesn't only apply to the entrepreneur, it applies to employees as well. So you can't have a single point of failure. So if you have your right-hand man or woman and they are the linchpin of everything, that's no different than you being the linchpin. Because if a buyer, think about it like a buyer. If a buyer, and you guys are acquirers, you're buying businesses, think about it. You go into a business and you look at it and you find that Sally, like without Sally, if she's an employee, not the owner, without Sally, this business does not exist. What are you going to do in the offer? You're going to make sure you somehow get her contractually obligated to stay. Okay, so single point of failures are no good. Can't do that. So you've got to base your business on the systems. So in stage 1, it's delegate. Stage 2 is assemble the support squad. Stage 3 is your A team. Stage 4 is systems and processes. That's why it's stage 4. We got to get the people first, and then we double down on the systems. If the systems are golden, you can get new people. People can be interchanged. The systems need to be the thing that the business is built on, not just people and personality. It's got to be built on systems. Then the second layer to this is legal. And this is, of course, going to be different in every state. You know, if you're in the nutty states like California and New York, there's weird employment laws. But in most states, you can lock people into non-competes, non-disclosures. There's a lot of things you can do from a legal standpoint to keep them contractually obligated to the business for a certain period of time, not forever. And you can also make sure that they don't, as in your example, Russ, go off and steal opportunities, steal customers, steal processes, steal IP. There are ways to protect against that. But that's more like the safety net. But the third thing, this is the most important thing, is building a culture that people don't want to leave. Building a business that they actually love to be a part of. So even though I wasn't daily involved in the business after I exited without exiting, I still showed up at our monthly team meetings when the whole company got together. I remember one time, we were on a pretty big hiring spree, and we'd hired a whole bunch of people, and I'd met most of them. Here I show up at a meeting, and I'm walking around the room saying hi to people. I'd say probably a third of the people didn't know who I was. Maybe not that many, but there was a handful of people there that didn't know who I was. And I remember one lady walking up to me. She goes, we introduced ourselves. She goes, "Well, who are you?" And I said, she goes, "Well, what do you do here?" I said, "I own the company." She goes, "Oh shit." Like she didn't know I was the owner of the company. And, but you got to make sure that you build a culture that is worth somebody staying there. And I hope that I've done that in my businesses. I think that if you look at the tenure of people who worked for that company that we've been speaking about, I had people that and millennials who worked for me for a decade or more, and up to a decade, and that's unheard of for that generation of people to do that. And why? It's not because I'm amazing, but I built a good culture around that. The companies that I own and operate today, I'm hoping that I'm building a culture that people don't want to leave.
I love that. Now, I know up to this point, we've been talking to primarily people who already own a business and trying to empower them with this new way of thinking. Talk about the person who's trying to find their own personal passive income journey and their projection of where they're going, and they're considering buying or building a business in this current economic environment. Talk about why what you're talking about would actually be the best step for that person.
So I don't know who said it, but there's an author, I read his book years ago, Start with the End in Mind. And I know he probably didn't coin it, but I remember that being a big point of his book, Start with the End in Mind. So if you're a new entrepreneur that you want to start or buy a business, and you have to start with the end in mind, you got to start today with understanding that you are building an asset that you are going to exit from, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. It is not, this is not, will it happen? It's just when. You're either going to die, you're going to lose it, or you're going to sell it. Like, that's it, right? You're going to exit. Somehow you're going to get out of the business. Now, what I would say beyond that is my advice would be, don't start a business. That's the hardest road to hoe. It is so difficult. And this business that I run now, my Exeter Club, is the hardest business. I've started 14 companies. It is the hardest 100%, hands down, that I've ever started and tried to make successful. And it's doing great, but it's been very, very difficult for lots of different reasons.
You're trying to herd cats. You're trying to manage entrepreneurs, man.
Yeah, well, that and when you're selling just intellectual property, it's a whole different ball game, whether you're selling a widget or selling a service. Well, besides that, there are gazillion, and I think that's an actual statistic, there are a gazillion companies for sale right now who are owner dependent and that don't have the systems and processes in place, and you can pick up for a song. And then if you do what I'm talking about, you can, within a year, you can turn that to a non-owner dependent company, and you've got a real asset on your hand. Or you could just go to Wix.com or GoDaddy and buy a domain and then get a contract with a vendor and start your own doggone thing with no systems, no processes, no vendors, no customers, no nothing, and hope that it works. That is a terrible idea. Now, I've started 14. Like, I get it. I've enjoyed doing it. I will never do it again under maybe rare circumstances if the opportunity presented itself, but go buy a business. It is so much easier, so much more quick to get to success financially and otherwise. And if you buy the right one, you still have the opportunity to innovate and do your own thing.
Yeah, I think the buy then build strategy is very wise. Starting something from scratch creates a lot of stress and pressures, and it's the reason why so few ever make it. But then the ones that have been around a number of years, the success rate is super high. And if you can implement what Jason's telling you, Tribe, in that business, now you can actually get to a model where it is working without you, whether you decide to exit without exiting, or you take them on and you move on to the phase 7, the final exit. Jason, for those who are interested in what you're up to, where would you send them to get more information?
I think the best place would be on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at The Real Jason Duncan. I think that's on the screen now for those watching this. But really, anywhere online, if you just at The Real Jason Duncan, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever, you're going to find me, and be happy to serve you and give you whatever resources I can.
Man, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure to have you.
This has been a great conversation. You guys asked really good questions. Well, most of them were good, but that was
well, as long as you're talking about what you're talking about, so you talk about it. That's always good. All right, Try. Thank you so much for taking time to listen. We know your time is the most valuable resource. If you are a business owner, you're trying to be a business owner, understanding how invaluable your time is. So if you're going to take time, invest it, not trying to be the hero, but empowering other people, the A team on that team, so that they can become heroes, so that you can then exit without exiting. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.